Ukraine's deputy defense minister says its forces have retaken 130 square miles along the southern front since the start of the Kyiv's counteroffensive against Russian troops. Now, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have repelled attacks near Bakhmut, which Wagner forces took in May. Now, there is also fighting in the Zaporizhzhia region and in the west of Donetsk. Now let's bring in our ICE correspondent, John Cookson, who has been monitoring developments, and he joins us now from London. Thank you for joining us, John. Now let's start it. We've heard that the Wagner chief, Prigozhin, is still being investigated. Does it mean the deal he made with the Belarusian president over the weekend, which Putin, is actually off?
Hi guys, great to see you. Well, what is going on? Well, Prigozhin, according to the Russian news outlet Kommersant, is still being investigated for treason and quotes him being in breach of the Article 279 of the Russian Criminal Code. And of course, we thought that he'd been given amnesty for calling off the mini rebellion. It seems that the investigation is still very much ongoing. What does that mean? Well, I think this is probably a way of keeping Prigozhin, who is clearly a rebel, in check. In other words, the Russian government is saying to him, look, we can revive this at any time, these treason charges. So I think that's what's actually going on at the moment, saying he's still under investigation. The big question also today is, where is Prigozhin? He was last seen leaving Rostov-on-Don at the weekend, but hasn't surfaced since. He's supposed to be in Belarus under the terms of this so-called deal, but a man who is very much a presence on social media has not made his presence known at all. Maybe we'll hear from him later today, but it's a very interesting scenario. The other question, of course, is what's happened to the Wagner troops? Where are they? No one is quite sure where they are, or indeed how many there are. Prigozhin always claimed to have around 25,000 under his control, but certainly thousands have been lost in recent campaigns in the assault on Ukraine. So how many men does he have, and where exactly are they? So a lot of questions surrounding this today, and it's a very dynamic and fluid situation indeed.
I mean, we're looking at what's going on with the defense minister, Shoigu. Is he safe in the job? I mean, he's been accused of gross incompetence. So how safe is he in this job?
I think he's safe for now, and you mentioned the video that was released, and with the caveat saying that no one's quite sure when it was shot or where it was shot. Could have been last week, it could have been yesterday. Released today, and very much a propaganda film by Russian state media to say that Shoigu is still very much a defense minister. And, you know, this guy's been around for a long time now. He's a very close confidant of President Putin. They go hunting, shooting and fishing together. They play ice hockey together. Shoigu first became a minister back in 1994. He served 12 Russian prime ministers. He knows his way around the political system. And although eyebrows were raised when he was made defense minister because he has very little military experience, I think the release of this video, whenever it was shot, was a statement by the Kremlin to say that Shoigu is safe. And the other thing to say is that if Putin sacked his defense minister, that will be seen, interpreted by many as another sign of the weakness of the regime, which has certainly been rocked by the failed putsch that happened at the weekend.
All right, the Ukrainians are saying very little about the political chaos in Moscow. What do you believe they are thinking at this moment in time?
Yeah, they are saying very little. Zelensky made some comments at the weekend on Saturday saying when the rebellion was underway that he thought that Putin was very afraid. And he did have a telephone conversation yesterday with Joe Biden. I think the Americans are saying to Zelensky, look, let's just leave things as they are for now. Just don't make too many comments, because no one really knows what's happening in the Kremlin. And I would also say this, that Putin has to reestablish his authority, his power. And I suspect that there's a big attack coming on Ukraine, just for Putin to say, look, this is what I can do. I'm not weak. I haven't been rocked by the mini revolt at the weekend, and I can still bomb Ukraine at will. And that's very sad, of course. And I think that's why the Ukrainians are saying not very much at the present time.
All right, John, I mean, we know that the coup was called off at the 11th hour after the deal was brokered by the Belarusian leader, Alexander Lukashenko. We saw Wagner's forces being just 4 hours away from Moscow when the news of the dramatic turnaround came. The deal includes immunity for the mutineers in exchange for their return to their camps. But are we clear as to whether President Putin has agreed to reshuffle the top military leadership?
Again, for the reason that I said earlier, I think that if he did have a major reshuffle at this time, that would further weaken the regime in the Kremlin. I mean, it's better, I would think, for Putin to stick with what he's got. I mean, it may well be that weeks and months down the line, he may have a purge. But I think that whilst the rebellion was seen as a terrific blow to the regime in Moscow, Moscow has to remain constant, and Putin must be seen to remain in charge. I think if he starts sacking people and shuffling them around within his government, that will be interpreted as a sign of weakness. So he's going to stick with the present setup for the time being.
All right. A lot of people, especially EU chiefs, have been saying that this has shown that there is a chink in the armor of Vladimir Putin. But talk to me. Do you think this will change the perception, or do you think that probably this will weaken Vladimir Putin in the eyes of the world?
As far as the rest of the world is concerned, the media coverage has been very much that Putin has been weakened by what happened at the weekend. It's a different story inside of Russia, of course, where all media is very much controlled. And the people there will be told in the coming days that not only is there a threat from the outside, but Putin has put down a threat from within. In other words, the rebellion that failed. So that's how it will be projected in Russia. So in the short term, I think as far as the rest of the world is concerned, Putin is seen as having been weakened by what's happened. And as I say, I suspect that he will reassert his authority in the war zone in the coming days, sadly. And, during that time, the world will move on, and we'll wait to see what happens next. But look, things are very, very fluid at the moment, and the coming weeks and months are going to be very, very, very interesting.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson, for being here with us on Newsday.